Shoring pumps provide the means to hydraulically expand, pressurise and retract all Groundforce hydraulically operated shoring equipment. Motorised pumps are recommended for use with larger equipment where high volumes of fluid need to be pumped. Shoring equipment can either be single or double acting. Single acting equipment needs to be manually retracted, whereas double acting equipment can be both expanded and retracted hydraulically. Most modern Groundforce equipment is double acting. Motorised pumps are only used with double acting equipment. Double acting equipment will always have two hose connections and a lock-off valve and can be expanded and retracted hydraulically. It is essential for the supervisor to be familiar with the equipment being installed by first thoroughly reading the user guide supplied by Groundforce with the hire documentation. The Groundforce motorised pump is powered by a small petrol engine, and it should always be used in a well-ventilated area and never in a confined space. The pump comprises of the following components: a protective cage incorporating lifting points, a 40-litre capacity fluid tank complete with a fluid level indicator, the pressure gauge, the hose connection panel and the flow direction valve, delivery hoses, 2 are always required for double acting equipment, shoring fluid concentrate. Before attempting to start the pump, check the petrol and the shoring fluid levels and top up as required. Please note that the pump incorporates a float switch which will stop the engine if the fluid level in the reservoir becomes too low. Check the oil weekly and more frequently if the pump is being used heavily. To start the engine from cold, follow these steps. Ensure that the flow lever is in the vertical position. Rotate the red ignition switch to the on position. Slide the petrol supply lever to the on position. Slide the choke lever to the closed position. Set the throttle lever to approximately mid position. Briskly pull the start cord to start the engine. As soon as the engine starts, back off the choke lever until the engine runs smoothly. After about 30 seconds, the choke should be retracted fully. The pump is now ready for use. It is recommended that the engine is operated at approximately 3/4 throttle. All hydraulic connections in the system are of the quick release type as shown here. Longer hoses are generally used with a motorised pump to minimise moving the pump around the excavation. Note that 2 hoses must be used for all double acting equipment, 1 hose for flow and 1 for return. The equipment is expanded by moving the flow lever to the ram out position. If the equipment fails to expand, first check all hose connections. If still unsuccessful, move the lever back to the central neutral position. Swap the hose connections over on the pump and try again. The pump is equipped with automatic pressure relief valves. Once the equipment has been expanded against the sheeting, it will pressurise to typically 1000 psi, as indicated on the pressure gauge. Once this pressure has been achieved, the lock-off valve on the equipment is closed. The flow lever returned to neutral and the hoses are removed. To retract the ram, first reconnect the hoses, then release the lock-off valve. The pump is then started and the flow lever moved to the ram in position. If the equipment fails to retract, move the lever back to the central neutral position. Swap the hose connections over on the pump and try again. If the pump is not going to be used again immediately, it should be switched off by returning the throttle to mid position and rotating the ignition switch to the off position. At the end of the day's work, the fuel lever should be moved to the off position. The delivery hose should be coiled up and kept above ground level to prevent excessive dirt contamination. Please observe the following points whilst using this equipment. Ensure that all daily checks are carried out. Position the pump on firm, level ground. Ensure adequate ventilation for exhaust fumes. Use 2 hoses for double acting equipment and ensure that all connections are made correctly. Regularly check the shoring fluid level in the reservoir. Throttle back or turn off the engine between pumping operations. Switch off the petrol tap at the end of each shift. Only use shoring fluid supplied by Groundforce in adequate concentrations and be aware of the cost regulations for this product. Wear appropriate PPE when operating and filling the pump. Inspect for signs of obvious defects at the start of every shift. Only use designated slinging points for lifting or lift with a fork truck. Do not manually lift the unit. Do not lift the unit without ensuring that all 4 cage anchorage bolts are in place. Do not use excessive force on any of the controls. Do not operate the engine in confined spaces. Do not exceed the equipment installation pressure. Do not allow the unit to run out of fuel or shoring fluid. Do not force the couplings off under pressure. Do not smoke while filling the petrol tank. Do not attempt to adjust the preset controls. And do not use shoring fluid other than supplied by Groundforce.